Lion's mane.
Lion's mane, the talk of the town.
Number one question I get asked about mushrooms that we use at our dinners and events: how do we use lion's mane? I like to treat it like it's a piece of meat, so chicken or steak, and just kind of trim it as such. These can go into our sauteed mushrooms or into another dish, or we can make a mushroom stock with any kind of trimmings. But then you're kind of left with this nice, big, beautiful chunk of mushroom.
And it's pretty usable down to like the core.
Yeah,
correct?
Absolutely.
So you don't have too much trim here.
No trim. I mean, this is totally usable too. You wouldn't necessarily have to cut it off. I'm just cutting it off so that we can get a nice, even sear on one side before we flip it. But totally, the whole mushroom is definitely usable. Maybe I would just trim off just this very bottom root because it's a little denser.
Yeah, and you can feel that too, right? When you go down, you can feel it gets a little bit harder right at the base, and so just cut that.
Absolutely.
That piece out.
We're gonna get a pan ripping hot, just like we do if we're gonna saute the mushrooms, just like you would if this was a piece of steak or a piece of chicken. That'll prevent it from sticking when we put it down and allow us to get a nice caramelization on it. Again, just like sauteing, no salt at the beginning of the process. We'll season it towards the end of the cooking process. It's one of the few items that we would do that for because of the water content in the mushroom itself.
So you're basically going to start out just like you were doing a saute.
Exactly the same. It's basically going to be the same process, but instead of kind of flipping and hopping them around, we're just going to leave it or flip it and leave it on its side for a longer period of time so that we get a nice crust on one side.
Beautiful.
Once your pan's heated up, we add the oil and then add our mushroom, making sure to kind of move it around as we put it into the pan, and then we just let it sit. And you can maybe tell us about this more, but it's got amazing health benefits too.
Yeah, absolutely. The brain benefits of the lion's mane, I think, is what people have become really aware of. And then a lot of times they see them on a menu or they taste them, they don't realize that it's also a culinary mushroom.
Yeah.
Because they're so used to seeing it as a supplement. But as you're showing us right now, it's an amazing culinary mushroom and can really sub in as that vegetarian option for a lot of people.
So now that our mushrooms started cooking, we've got some pasta water in here. And it takes just some simple dried linguine, pop it in. So back to our mushroom. You can see we're getting beautiful, nice color. We're just gonna flip it now, and you'll see it's starting to soften up a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in that center, because the center is heating up, that water is coming out to the outside, and we're just starting to cook that mushroom down.
So you are gonna see your mushrooms shrink a little bit when you cook them.
Absolutely, definitely. Especially for something like this, where this is the focus of the dish, you want to err on the side of having a larger piece than you plan on serving. Lion's mane like this, when it's cooked like this, it's going to shrink by about 75 to 60%.
Wow.
So quite a lot.
That's important to note if you're doing a dish like this, where you need that full head. When you're going into the store and you're finding one of these, you might want to select one that is a more uniform, fully intact piece.
Definitely.
Rather than a few different pieces.
Definitely.
So what else do you have lined up here?
Right, so we're cooking some pasta here. We've got some lemon that we're just gonna cut a cheek off of. This is called a cheek. We just get any kind of seeds out of there. That way we can just squeeze some fresh lemon juice. We've got some Parmesan cheese. We've got some aromatics, which we're gonna add now. So just like the sauteed, or just like you might finish a steak, we're gonna add a little bit of butter, and some rosemary, thyme, and crushed garlic.
Wow, look at that.
Right, and you see we've got color on both sides now. That butter is going to kind of continue to color the steak. At this point, we can add a nice generous amount of salt to both sides. Yeah, especially for a bigger piece like this. The same way you want to season your steak, lots and lots of salt on the outside. It's going to help continue to develop that crust. Nice black pepper.
Now that's a lot more salt than a person might be normally putting on?
Yeah, I think people are, like we talked about when we were sauteing, can be a little bit intimidated by salt. This is just gonna add that flavor. It's also gonna cook off a little bit as it sears, so it's gonna mellow out. It's gonna soak into the mushroom, that seasoning. You really need that amount of salt to make sure that you get the maximum flavor out of the mushroom. Just flipping it back and forth, making sure we're continuing to cook it, getting nice flavor from that butter and those herbs into the mushroom. Now, lion's mane is really resilient. You don't really have to worry about overcooking it. You could leave this in the pan as long as it's not gonna burn for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, low heat. You're not gonna overcook it. The only issue you're gonna have is it's gonna continue to shrink up and shrink up and shrink up. So it's finding that balance, you know?
And if you don't cook it long enough, what might you notice?
You'll notice that it might be a little bit chewier. You'll notice that it might be a little chewy, a little rubbery.
That's one of the things that we hear a lot is that people see the mushroom, they've heard of it, it looks beautiful, it looks crazy, what do I do with it? And then getting over the hump is one of the challenges, but it seems like this is a super straightforward way to prepare them.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're gonna turn our heat way down now, just to low. And we're gonna take our lion's mane out and set these aromats to the side. Now, all of this in the pan is flavored. So it's some of the liquid from the mushroom, melted butter, the aromats, the garlic. We're gonna use that to our advantage. Now we're gonna take our pasta and just add it right to that pan. Don't worry about having a little bit of water in. We're actually gonna add a little more anyway of our pasta water. That starch is gonna help bind our sauce that we're gonna make. So this is really easy. It's all made in one pot. You're utilizing the flavors from the previous ingredient that was in the pot and just continuing to use that pan. We're gonna add a little bit of butter to that pasta and that pasta water.
And you turn this down to low before?
Turned it down to low. Now we're gonna turn it back up and we're gonna boil that water and keep mixing it around with the pasta and the butter, and that's gonna make a nice butter sauce that coats the noodles.
Look at that.
We're gonna add a little bit of lemon juice.
Just from the cheek. It's my new vocab term today.
And then a little bit more pasta water as needed.
What do you look for to add more water?
Just, you know, you're looking for a nice sauce-like consistency. Just so that it kind of continues to keep the pasta hot, emulsify that butter in. And then we're gonna take a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano and grate it in right into the sauce, right into the pasta.
Oh, there it goes.
So that cheese melts in.
It loves it.
I always recommend using fresh Parmigiano Reggiano. So now we have our cooked pasta, a nice creamy Parmesan-y butter sauce. We're just gonna put that right on the plate. And then we're just gonna slice our mushroom up like we would a breast of chicken or steak.
Look at that.
Beautiful, nice and hot still. Put that right over our pasta. You have a beautiful, healthy, nutritious, vegetarian dish.
Bravo. That is beautiful. Look at that. Look at that.